My name is Yehuda Berg. I am co-director here at the Kabbalah Center, and I'm very excited to spend some time with you and share a little what we do here, and share some wisdom, share some thoughts, just sort of a little choosing and little bites of what we teach here. The Kabbalah Center was established in 1922. But the way that you see Kabbalah being taught today in these walls at the Kabbalah Center here and throughout the world, that was the brainchild of my parents, Rav and Karen Berg, in 1971. They decided that it was time, that the world needs this wisdom and understanding of Kabbalah. And just a few short 40 years ago, no one knew about Kabbalah. Today, you may have heard about it. You may have maybe wondered what it was or how it was. Maybe today's the first time you're going to have a chance to taste. Not going to be able to go through the whole body of knowledge. It's one of the main texts of Kabbalah, the Zohar. And just by itself, it's 23 volumes. It's a mass amount of wisdom. And the advantage of studying Kabbalah here, as opposed to, you could read a book, you could take classes online, you could Google, there's other ways of connecting to this wisdom. But what the center offers are teachers who have been taught directly by my father, Rav Berg, who was a master Kabbalist by himself, who was actually taught by his own master Kabbalist. And that relationship between teacher and student and being able to be guided and helped on your journey is really what the Kabbalah Center is all about. Here, we go through challenges and opportunities and whatever comes at us. And so tonight we're going to take a sampling. First thing everyone asks is, what is Kabbalah? What is this? What is it? The answer to that is that Kabbalah is a wisdom system that helps us make sense. Often we have questions that we go through in our life. Something happens and we want to know why. Or we're just stuck and we want to get unstuck. We got to move. We have a problem and we want to sort of try to find the solution. We're disconnected. Things just suddenly seem to happen. Everything was going great, and suddenly, boom, something hits us. Just trying to be able to make sense, have an understanding, maybe even answer the big questions of why. Why are we here? What we came to do here? Is there a world beyond what we see? Is it bigger? Kabbalah offers a system by which we could understand some of the bigger questions of the world in general, and some of the questions for our own life in particular. The information, the answer to whatever it is that we're facing, it exists in this world. It exists. Sometimes feels maybe we don't have it, right? We've had situations in life where we didn't know, and suddenly we got the answer. It means that information exists, we were just disconnected from it. Sometimes life seems random, and sometimes it actually seems like it makes sense. It's like when a little kid, we had those numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. And at the beginning, like, what are these numbers? But if you actually started connecting the dots, suddenly an elephant appeared. Suddenly a star appeared. Suddenly it makes sense. When you start connecting dots, things seem to make sense. And often, some random events, actually, you could get a clear picture of things that seem to be random when you have more information. There was once a teacher who had a student, and the student came to him and says, Master, life seems random. Just this question, the question that we're starting off today. Life seems random. Is there something that, could you make sense of that for me? He says, sometimes it's better to see something. Instead of me giving you the answer, I want you to see the answer for yourself. I want you to go tomorrow to a certain park, a certain part of town, and there's a big tree on the south side. I want you to sit 100 feet from there, and there'll be a story that will be unfolding in front of your eyes that will give you the answer to your question about randomness. You'll suddenly start to be able to connect the pieces, connect the dots, put everything together. Students excited. Oh my God, I get to see the answer tomorrow. He hardly could sleep, gets up in the morning, packs a sandwich, gets a bottle of water, and he sits down the south side of the park, 100 yards, 100 feet from the tree. An hour goes by. Then sees a guy walk by next to the tree, sits down, gets a little warm, gets some shade. He gets distracted. Maybe he had a phone call and starts walking. He's distracted and leaving the suitcase behind. A second guy comes, hot day by the tree. He sees this little suitcase. He opens it. He says, it's filled with money. He says, oh my God. He looks around. No one's there. Takes off. A minute later, a third guy comes and sits down. By this time, our distracted friend, whose little suitcase belonged to him, comes back. And he says to the third guy, he says, dude, where's my money? He says, what money? I just came to sit down. Don't you see it's a little warm out? I wanted some shade. He says, you stole my money. I went for a second. I came back. You here? Give me my money. They start arguing. He doesn't know what he's talking about. The first guy's convinced he stole it. He then goes and he beats him up. Beats him up, bloody, bloody, bloody. And he's all upset. He lost all this money and he goes. The guy observing this doesn't know what to make of this story. He goes back to his teacher. He says, Master, are you trying to prove to me that life is completely random? He says, what do you mean? He says, I saw today one guy make a lot of money for no reason. Another guy lose a lot of money for no reason. And the poor guy, a third guy, he was sitting there and someone just came and decked him and finished him, all black and blue. And so the teacher says to him, you see, what you're missing? You're missing some information. He says, what information? What could make this sense? He says, see the first and the second guy? The first guy who lost the money to the second guy. Previously, years ago, they were partners in business together. And the one guy stole from him. And this is the universe way of giving him back the money that belongs to him. Took it from one guy to the other guy. He stole it. He thought he got away with it, but he didn't. The universe found a way to bring them both in a situation where the one guy is going to give back the money to the other guy. He says, you know what? That actually makes sense. But the poor guy, he was sitting there and he got beaten up. Nothing could make sense out of that. He says, oh, wait. See, before, when the one guy stole from the other, he sued for the money. They went to court. And the guy knew he was going to lose. So he took out and he bribed the judge. And the third guy who got beaten up, he was the judge who took the bribe. So now, if we have that information and we see the story unfold, we know the one guy's going to lose the money because he stole that money. The money doesn't really belong to him. So boom, the universe gave it back. The second guy who thought he lost all the money suddenly out of nowhere gets this money. Now we understand. He lost it, now he gets it back. And the judges aren't supposed to take bribes. They're supposed to judge the facts. They're supposed to see what happens, and to the best of their ability, with the education they have, their intuition that they have, and everything that they have, to have and not to be swayed by any of that. When we have the information, we can actually make sense from the randomness that occurs throughout our life. What we offer here at the center, what Kabbalah, the wisdom offers, and the way that we teach, is being able to give us more of the picture, to have more information. What we call that is expanding our consciousness. We expand our vision so we could actually make sense to what happens. We can actually see more. We're here in LA. I'm personally a Knicks fan. I grew up in New York. But here in LA, we had an awesome player, Magic Johnson, right? People heard of him? Right? Okay, right? I'm not the only... My son's a Laker fan, so I get to know the little Lakers. He would throw passes. He would throw passes behind his head, through, like, how did he know? Because he knew. Basketball-wise, he had an expanded consciousness. He was able to see what others couldn't. He could see what others couldn't. Imagine we took that kind of vision into the life that we have. Be able to see more. Be able to recognize what unfolds. Being able to connect those dots in the life that we have. Because in our life, there are two ways that we could see life. We could see life that it's completely random, completely making no sense, just whatever happens. Or, as the founder of the Center of Ashlag quotes it, having a purposeful life, where there's an actual purpose and a reason for our presence in this world. We actually came here for a reason. We came here with a purpose. There's a meaning behind what happens, not just complete. Those are the two ways to see. Either life's all random, we don't need any spirituality, we don't need nothing. We just need to live life because we're going to die, and that's it. That is the extent of life. We're here, try to grab as much as you can, try to be as much as you can, and then you die. One way of living. Choice number two of living, hopefully more and more of us could choose choice B, actually have a reason and a purpose of why we're here. Why we're here, that we came to accomplish something, we came to achieve something. That there's more than just what we see. We have a world that is guided by our five senses. If we see it, if we could touch it, if we could smell it, if we could taste it, then it is. And if it's not, it's not. There's a very small kind of universe. Or there's more. We believe there's more. There's more to be understood, there's more to be learned, and there's more to be understood. There's more to be understood about our life. Things just don't happen by accident. Things don't happen by coincidence. There's a reason why things are the way they are. You know, when I think about coincidences and things are the way they are, I'll share sort of a story that happened to me on a flight once. So I'm flying from LA to Miami. I have to give a talk there. And when I go on a flight, I don't like to talk to anyone. I put on my headphones. I try to get each and every one of us has like spaces of their own. My little space that's mine, that I don't want anyone to deal with me. I just want my flights. Just don't talk to me. So if you've ever seen me on a flight, I probably wasn't nice to you. I probably didn't say a word, borderline obnoxiously rude. Just have my own, that's my space. That's my little world that I disconnect from everything. So I'm on this flight. 25 minutes into the flight, there's a big boom. Silence. Lights are off. You know those masks that they say that if we lose cabin pressure? Sometimes they actually come down, right? So it's a mess. 45 seconds later, which seemed like 45 minutes, stabilized, lights going on. And the lady sitting next to me, she's like, "Excuse me." I'm like, "Don't talk to me." I didn't say that, but I said, do you think we're going to make it? I'm like, "Don't you know that I don't want to talk to anyone right now? I just want to have my own little life, quiet." Anyway, make it long story, she was freaking out, like losing it. And they had to dump the fuel and all this, 45 minutes till we land. Our windshield broke and there was a crack. Apparently there's 2 windshields in a plane. I didn't know. You learn new things every day. The one went flying and the second one had a crack in it. Obviously, I'm here, so everything was okay. But there's a reason why I was in 21B and she was in 21C. She would, I don't know if, somebody else she could have freaked out. The whole place could have freaked out. Things could have ended really bad. But there was a reason I sat next to her. And especially me who didn't want to go out of my little comfort zone, had to, and go out of my little cave in the flight to be able to take care of her. And things happen for a reason. And nothing is really by randomness. Randomness, we think it is, but often we're fooled by randomness. There's an actual system and dots that we can't connect. Now, I'm sure there's 50 other flights where we're sitting with people, there was no reason, and then we left. But sometimes there are. We have to be aware. And by expanding our consciousness, we can grab those opportunities where there's a reason. I have a good friend from Russia who, a flight to San Diego 2 months ago, met a guy, now they're dating, who happened to sit next to her. And sometimes, bless you, and sometimes there's a reason why things end up the way they are. So we have expanding our consciousness and actually understanding that there's a reason. There's a reason behind some of the stuff that happens in our life. Now, that's a great knowledge and force to be able to trying to do, where we try to see more, trying to be more, trying to be more aware, but there's actions that we take sometimes that actually narrow our consciousness, actually make it smaller. There are, and it's not anything that I came up with or anybody today. These are actually laws of the universe. A lot of what Kabbalah teaches, they're just a spiritual law of the universe. One of the laws is that in our hands we could expand or narrow our consciousness. Our reaction to what happens in our life determines if we're going to expand or narrow our consciousness. Expand or narrow our ability to make sense. Especially when things that aren't great happen. We get a phone call, we're fired. We get a phone call, something happened, this, that. The way we react to what happens in our life greatly determines how those actions will affect us today and tomorrow. Our reaction. Often it's how we react to something negative that happens. We get called and we get fired. Let's take an instance. Someone gets fired. Usually when something happens in our life that's negative, our reaction is either, who did this to me? Who can I kill? Who can I choke? I'm not a violent person. I just like to express. Who do I choke? Who do I kill? Who do I get back at for doing that to me? Sometimes, if we're a religious person, we blame God. God, why did you do this to me? God, when I needed you the most, you just abandoned me. Blame God. Like God has nothing better to do and to mess with my life. Or more, God must have a voodoo doll of me, and at his leisure, let me prick him a little. Tick! Ah! You know, God that I believe in, he doesn't do that. So sometimes we blame God. We try to find blame in other people. We just become miserable. Like, happened again, and we become like a victim. Like what we call victim consciousness. Like we just become miserable, and we get closed, and we don't talk to anyone. Just go into like that space. Our reaction to what happens in our life will greatly determine what happens with that, the outcome. Let's take Bob, right? Bob from accounting is to blame for me getting fired. When we find out that it's Bob, we go to our car. Again, I'm not a violent guy. I do play golf, so I would have a golf club, but I wouldn't do what this guy would do next. He takes out a golf club. He goes and finds Bob's parking spot. And he takes the golf club and smashes his window. Because somehow that's going to make me feel better. By not only finding who to blame, but actually get back at him. Okay, now he feels pain. But that doesn't make the situation any better. In fact, it makes it worse. We're going to have to pay for the damage. He may even sue us, or they're going to arrest me for whatever it is that you arrest for when you hit a car with a golf club. So we've only made the situation worse. We feel good for 20 seconds. 20 seconds of that revenge. 20 seconds, bless you. 20 seconds of yes. Now you know what it feels like. But then we have to live with that we did. We don't make it better. In fact, when something happens in our life, we could look back in our life. Sometimes negative stuff that happens, or things that weren't exactly as we wished, sometimes actually make me better, make me stronger, so I could face challenges. Sometimes if I look backwards in my life, I could actually see that, you know what? It wasn't such a bad thing that this happened. I actually needed to go through that so I could face even a bigger challenge. Like when we look back in our life, not everything is as it was at the moment it happened. Usually our initial reaction is just what it is. It's just a reaction. It doesn't serve me in the best way. It's not how best I can maximize the situation. It's just a reaction. Just how our self is programmed to be in that situation. We're programmed, someone does something to us, we do back to them. We're programmed that if something happens in my life, as opposed to take responsibility, we choose to blame. And if we can't find anyone, we just grab God because he won't answer back. Because he won't tell us, no, it's not me. We find a way. Often, when we blame, we lose the opportunity to learn from that experience. One of my favorite stories I'm going to share, favorite stories about a king. So this king is on the river, in the royal yacht down the river, sailing down the river, and he's hanging out with his advisors, and he's talking, and he puts his hand on the ledge of the boat, and the royal seal falls off his hand, goes into the water. King starts freaking out. Oh my God, it was my father's, my grandfather's. It's been in our family for hundreds of years, and I just lost it. He tells his crew, park the boat on the side of the river. So they park the boat. He lines up all his advisors. They're all standing in line. The king says to them, he says, tells his crew, his advisor, he says, whoever, any one of you, who gets me my seal, my ring, I will give them absolutely anything they want. And when I say anything, I mean anything and everything they want. You want a palace? Yours. Gold, silver, emeralds, diamonds, whatever you want, ask for it, and you shall receive. Just please get me that. The king stops, and nobody moves. And he's shocked. But what the king doesn't know is that there's a bunch of piranhas, barracudas, crocodiles, you name it, it's in the water. Most dangerous waters. No one moves. 2 minutes later, one of his brave advisors jumps in, and he's fighting with all what's there, and even some blood is bubbling out, and he's 2 minutes on the water, and finally, he gives the king, he says, King, here's your ring. But he's all a little messed up, so they patch him up, they aloe vera and whatever it is. They try to patch him up, put some... The king, after a few minutes, he's relaxed and blood and all this. He says, okay, I promised you I will give you anything. Please, ask. I owe you a debt of gratitude. This is my most important possession. Please tell me, how can I ever repay you? What can I do? What can I give to you for this? The guy looks to the king. He says, King, I just want one thing. He says, please, anything. He says, I just want to know who pushed me into the water. He could have had absolutely anything. And instead of having millions of dollars, instead of having, all he wants to know who's pushed him. In our life, and we laugh, but in our life, sometimes we do the same thing. We give up opportunities to grow. We give up the ability to have, because we want to blame. We want to pay back. We want revenge. All these reactive attributes, they don't really serve us. They don't really benefit us. They benefit us for the very, 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 very short term. Very temporary. As opposed to something that really is longer lasting. And if we want to expand our consciousness, our behavior has to be one that is thinking more of the bigger picture of our life, longer term of our life, instead of making us feel good for the next 20 seconds. If you want to expand, it has to serve us, really serve us, in the best possible way. So one of the obstacles that we have, one of the blocks to being able to expand our consciousness is our reaction and is our victim consciousness or blaming consciousness that happens as things happen in our life, as things transpire in our life. Our reaction to it greatly determines if we're going to maximize or lose that opportunity. Because in truth, things that may look awesome right now may end up really bad. You know, the guy who calls up his wife, he says, honey, I got an amazing promotion. I'm going to captain finally my own ship. Really? Honey, what's the name of the ship? It's called the Titanic. Amazing opportunity didn't exactly end up as an opportunity. Or the guy who has an amazing date, the best date of his life. She's awesome. She's hot. She's great. They go out 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Year and a half later, he proposes. A year after that, they get married. They have their 2.5 kids together. And 3, that's the average, I think, 2.5. That's why I said that. 3 years after that, they have trouble. They end up getting a divorce. And it's a bloody one. Lawyers and this and a fight, and each one's using the kids as shield and all this. And all he could think about is, I wish I never met her. I wish I never went on that date. Looking back, he's like, oh, that was the worst day of my life. But when he was there, it was the best day of his life. So, good and bad today is not the same good and bad when we have real 20/20 vision, a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years later. So, besides the fact that our reaction narrows our consciousness, besides the fact that how we react greatly affects how much we see or not see, but practically good and bad is still yet to be determined. Sometimes it's better to go through something. It's better to go through maybe something that's not 100% comfortable, maybe not 100% exactly the way we want it, because it gives us an opportunity to have more. It expands us. If you're in finance, sometimes it's worth it to have a really bad trade. If you're a trader, right? If you make a trade that loses $1,000, you could say, oh my God, it's such a terrible thing. But imagine you take that information, and the next time there's not $1,000 on the table, there's $100,000 on the table, there's $200,000 at the table. And then last time I did this time I'm going to do it differently. So instead of being upset that I lost $1,000 3 years ago, I'm actually ecstatic because I just made $1 million. And sometimes we have mini failures so we could have great successes. Life, the universe, is there to help us and to support us and to teach us. If we're just willing to accept sometimes the lessons. And if you ask yourself, why does life sometimes have to be so hard? Why can't it be easier? Why do we have to go through all this? Why do millions of Americans have to go through now needing a job? Or even if we have a job, it's not the best that we could have. There's obviously, for every one of our life, some of our life that we would like to be better. Why does it always have to be a struggle? Why can't it just be easy? If we're a believer in God, here in the center, we have teachers who are Christians, Jewish, Muslim teaching. We have a center in Dubai, and there's a Muslim teacher. She's awesome. And we have, we're more sort of the, you need to have some form, when you're spiritual, you need to have some form of connection to a higher being. Doesn't necessarily have to be God. You don't have to call him God or Allah or whatever it is that we connect to. We have teachers who are of all faiths. We have students. You look at this room, and there's all kinds of people here, all kinds of amazing people. We have from all races, from all places in the world, teachers and students. So one of the great things about Kabbalah is it's truly for everyone, because we have all types that are teachers and all types that are students. So if I was God, and I was trying to create this world, I would give everyone anything they wanted. You want this? I give it to you. That's if God was really nice. So why does God have to be all complicated? Why does it have to be some kind of system and laws and this? Why couldn't it just be if God wants us to be happy, and I truly believe that at the end of the day, God wants us happy, God wants us to be fulfilled. God really wants that. So if God wants that, why doesn't he give it to us? The answer the Kabbalists taught, my father taught me I grew up in a home. It was my father, very small family. My father, my mom. We had me and my brother, 2 boys, and we had 2 older sisters. Very, very small family. And we used to go to school. And when I became a teenager, at night I would study with my father, my brother. That's how, from the age of 14, I was studying this. And many of what I share tonight and in general are stuff that I learned from him, that he learned from his teacher. And one of the things that he taught me at a very young age, he says, if we don't earn what it is that we have in our life, it's not really going to be ours. We have to earn for it to truly be ours. If Magic Johnson gave us a magic basketball, if I was in Chicago, I would say MJ, but I'm here in LA, so it's Magic or it's Kobe. And he gave us a magic basketball, a magic golden purple basketball. And he gave a spell, and he said, anytime you're going to throw it to the basket, it's going to go in. If that's the kind of basketball he gave us, we would go to the park, score 30 points, and win. And go again and again and again. You know what happens after a year? Maybe 2, maybe 5. As long as our ego will let us feel like we're king of the world, eventually there's not going to be a challenge. Eventually we're going to stop playing basketball because it's not going to be challenging for us. You don't go and play 6-year-olds because you're going to win. You try to get to a place where maybe you're going to lose, where maybe it's not going to be successful. Maybe you're going to lose, maybe you're going to win, and then when we win, wow, I did something. I accomplished something. Or a child of a billionaire who gets everything. You know what usually happens? If the father never gives his son the opportunity to earn for himself, eventually that child resents his father. Even though the father has just given him everything. Why? How? Because he didn't give him a space to be able to earn for himself. And part of the reason why life just seems to be a bit hard or not easy or needing to overcome and needing to do and having to struggle is because things need to be ours, need to be earned. Laws of the universe is that things will never come, things that are real will never come to us easy. And if we look at our life, things that we treasure and things that we feel that are truly mine, we have to fight or struggle, or there's a story behind that. It's not just something that it just came to us very easily and naturally. Not everything, but some. Some of the things that we truly treasure are things that we had to fight for. If a boat doesn't rock, it's going nowhere, right? Sometimes in a relationship, the scariest thing for me is when people say, oh, we never fight. Someone, this girlfriend, boyfriend, partner, husband, wife, says, oh, we never fight. Something's wrong. Because it has to be going somewhere, it has to be leading somewhere, it has to be something that's not that it has to be, hard and torture, but it has to be some part of a struggle. Has to be some barriers that we have to overcome. So when 2 people finally they overcome some of that difficult time, they appreciate each other to no end because they've overcome, because they've reached somewhere. For me, I know one thing. I know that one day, for my life personally, and for the world in general, we're going to reach a level where the struggle ends. If we're Christian, it's a second coming. If we're Jews, it's the Messiah or that consciousness where there's peace on earth. And I believe that for the bigger picture of the world, there's a time where peace on earth comes, where chaos ends. For our life personally, we could reach a critical mass in ourselves where we reach our own peace, we reach our own fulfillment, we reach our own destiny, where we're happy, we're content. We don't have to run after anything. We feel our life is in a state of bliss. I feel and I know that that's going to happen. The question is not if, the question is when. How long will it take us personally and the world at large to get to that place? A story that my father once told me. There was this master Kabbalist who took one of his students, and they went to the window. And they were staring at the window for a few minutes. And eventually the student starts to cry. After a few minutes, the Kabbalist leaves and the student is there. So the rest of his friends are like, "What did the master teach you?" He says, "We went to the window and he showed me all the joy and happiness that will be in the world when there'll be peace." So they said, "So why were you crying?" He says, "Well, I was crying because I saw all the pain and suffering that the world will have to go through until there will be peace on earth, until chaos will come to an end. In my own life, I saw chaos and all kinds of stuff." That ending of pain and suffering, the big or small for my life, the happiness that we truly strive to, will happen. The only question is when. And it's in our hands to shorten that process. What we teach here, in these walls, is how to overcome in that process. Take you on a journey to get to a place where happiness is a possibility, where fulfillment is a possibility, where end of pain and suffering for our own life is a possibility, and yes, how it relates to the world at large. That's who we are. That's what we do. I just want to take a few moments of your time to just intro you to the world of Kabbalah and the world of the Kabbalah Center. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful night.